Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about Jayden Daniels and his season and basically going back throughout the year and like moments that kind of revealed something about him. And especially you go back to the spring and why Zach Ertz and Terry McLaurin both thought he was the real deal long before everybody else knew it. So, anyways, that's up on ESPN.com. Also have one up on the site about this Washington's quest to stop Saquon Barkley, or at least limit him, because that's going to be a big key in this game for sure. So that's all up on ESPN.com. Also, you Gold members doing the private Zoom Friday night, 7:30. I hope I'm all done with my work at that point. It's been a long couple of weeks, folks. A lot of fun enjoying the ride, but it is a lot of stuff. So, anyways, but 7:30 Eastern time for you Zoom, for you Gold members, and there we go. So today I'm joined by ESPN's Louis Riddick, and I wanted to bring him on because he's very smart about football, but also he knows this organization and he also knows the Eagles because he worked for both. Now, he did not work for any of these people here now, of course, but he knows the city. He knows what this organization means to the city, but he also still scouts the game and he still watches the game. And he was extremely high on Jayden Daniels before the draft. And he's very high on him now, and why he is so impressed with what this group has done. And, just in 1 year's time, it's really remarkable. So I want to bring him on to talk about all that. I think you will enjoy that. Before I get to him, just a couple of things. So today, I'm taping this on Thursday. They did practice. Washington did practice outdoors. They had practiced indoors on Wednesday in the bubble. Well, partly that the reason why is because we've got a lot of snow, a lot of ice, a lot of cold weather. So the fields are frozen. So what they had to do on the first couple of days of the week is they basically had a tarp over one field, the new field, where they used to have that old ratchety turf field. But they had a new field there, and they had a covering over it, and they just had blowers in there to try and to de-thaw the field, and they finally got it. So they're able to practice outside on Thursday. Very important since they're playing outdoors on Sunday and playing in about 40-degree weather, it looks like. So not too bad, but you want to make sure you get out there. The bubble is good when it's windy and cold and you're not going to be playing those conditions. You want to get good work in, but you don't want to go into a game on Sunday having been indoors all week when you're going to have to go outside and play. So good, it's good there. And then as far as offensive line, I know people want to know who's going to start right guard. My sense would still be Trent Scott. We don't know for sure, and they're not going to tell us. And they're really good at not letting things get out, and good for them. So, but that would be my sense right now. And I know Quinn said on the other day that, hey, get your five best out there. And of course, some of you could think, hey, does that mean pushing Wiley inside? I think it's the scenario you would have to consider, because you have to consider what's the best situation for your team. But I still think it would be Scott. I mean, whoever goes in there is going to have a time. You put Wiley in there, he's going to have a hard time against Jalen Carter, period. So anybody is. So should you keep it relatively the same, except for that spot? And, I know Cornelius Lucas could go over there, but I know they like Wiley playing tackle there out of all these people. So anyways, so whoever's in there is going to struggle against Jalen Carter, because Cosme had his issues with him too. It's just the way it is. He's that good. So you just don't want him to control the game and wreck it. So anyways, a lot of the conversation today in the locker room or in the building and all that, or the press conferences, is about a lot of things. My line was about Barkley because I think he's a big key in stopping him. But I will say, this is a normal week for these guys. The difference is a little bit more media, having some of these pressers in the auditorium where the team meetings take place. So today we talked to Bobby Wagner there. Yesterday it was Sam Still, Jeremy Reeves, McLaurin, Jayden Daniels. And then the coaches have all talked in there as well. Tomorrow on Friday, we'll talk to Jayden Daniels again, Dan Quinn again. I don't know of any other players, but then you go down the locker room. In the locker room, same as it always has been. So for example, I'm walking by Jayden Daniels, Wagner, and Mike Samerstill, and they're having a conversation. Daniels is tight with both of them. But what I hear Wagner is, it's true to form. It's like he was kind of ragging on Daniels for wearing non-prescription glasses. So anyways, point is, things are normal here. And that's a good thing for this team. So, all right. So don't forget my 5 things I think will run on Saturday. Got a lot for you. Haven't been able to do as much prep work as I normally do because, to be honest, folks, It's been swamped. The number of radio requests are off the charts, but also just the workload increases, which is all good because this is a hell of a ride and an enjoyable one. So, but anyways, but I will have my 5 things I think on Saturday. Look for that. Anyways, now here we go. Here's my conversation with ESPN's Louis Riddick. All right, Louis, I haven't seen anything like this. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this. What do you make of what has happened in Washington in just 1 year?
Yeah, obviously, John. I mean, it starts at the very top. You know how important in professional sports alignment is,
Right.
and everyone talks about it. Everyone kind of like says, "Yeah, yeah, I know that's what everyone's after." Well, if it was so easy and it was something you just kind of blow off and then get into the other minutia of team building, then everyone would be successful at it. And it's just difficult. And look, obviously, um, what has happened there between ownership, front office, head coach, quarterback is the sweet spot. It's the ideal. They've never had it like that. I don't know. I don't know what it was like back in the days of Bobby Beathard and Mr. Cook and Joe, and whether it be Mark Rippon or Joe Theismann or Doug or whoever it was. But I can tell you this: it couldn't be better than what it is right now. It just absolutely couldn't, especially considering all the things that, that challenge teams in today's modern era as far as trying to keep that alignment with the way people are pulled in 1,000 different directions. So look, Josh, obviously Harris has put together a great ownership group. I mean, I saw a video the other day of Magic Johnson in the locker room greeting guys as they come in, and he kind of took off his ownership hat there for a minute. He became the captain of the LA Lakers again.
Yep.
And that kind of thing resonates with today's player. That makes guys go, if they care about me like that, it's not like people say, well, I'm not going to try hard to convert this third and
Right.
three, but it damn sure makes people go, I'm going to play through some things. I'm going to make sure I put in extra effort. I'm going to make sure I'm putting extra time. So that's working. Obviously, Adam knows exactly what he's looking for as far as, players. And obviously he has a great rapport with Dan and what Dan wants. And then the quarterback is just, I'll just put it this way. When I went down to his pro day last year, every person down there told me, look, his physical skills jump off I mean, everybody can see that.
Right.
But it was the commitment that he made from the time he transferred from ASU to LSU to try and really immerse himself in the minutia of that offense and be an absolute let's just say an expert in it from day one. So then he could go ahead and gain the confidence and gain the respect of his teammates was something that jumped off the page with them right away. It sounds like he did the same thing in Washington. And so
Absolutely.
when you get that, everything else just flows, dude. I mean, everything else just flows off of that. And this team it's not a flash in the pan. They're just going to build off of this, regardless of how long or whether or not their season ends this coming weekend or not, which it seems like a lot of people are believing they have a damn good chance of winning this game. And I believe the same thing.
And it's funny, Lewis, because like one thing this team has, in addition to Jayden Daniels, but
Yeah.
the belief they have, and it go to me, it goes back to roster construction. You bring in guys like Wagner, Ertz, used to being in big games, Eckler, guys like that. You have McLaurin
Mm-hmm.
here, but it seems like the roster construction plus the quarterback has led to some level of belief.
Yeah.
And like as an athlete, how far can that belief take you? And what difference does it make in a game?
Yeah. Um, but those are very smart acquisitions. Number one, because like everyone says, you don't want to have a team full of exceptions, meaning a team full of older guys who are kind of on their last leg, maybe looking for that last payday. You can't really sustain it for 18 weeks. Well, these were very smart acquisitions, and they were smart because of the thing that you're talking about. These guys have long, long resumes, not just in terms of their accomplishments on the
Right.
field, but Austin Eckler is a pro. Zach Ertz is a pro. Bobby Wagner is a pro. And by pro, I mean the same things that Clay Matthews was telling me back in 1993 when I was in Cleveland. And I said, what does that mean? Because he used to say that all the time. Every day he walked on the practice field, he said, be a pro. And I used to always like look at him and be like, okay, yeah, we're all pros. We're getting paid. We're out here. And he'd be like, no, you'll know what I mean. And what he meant was be the first guy in here, do the extra, listen to the coaches, execute the technique the way you're supposed to, dress the way they ask you to during practice. Be early for the team playing, be first in team meetings, sit up front, all those kind of things. And obviously these guys do those kinds of things down there. And John, that does that's kind of like that's some of the competitive advantage. Those are the inches that you're looking for. Every team has access to the same players. This isn't college. You can't out recruit people. You manage the cap. You try to draft smart. You try to develop and implement them. Those are all things that everyone has equal access to do. The one thing that everyone doesn't have equal access to, though, is the knowledge of knowing how to build a roster and get those kind of players that will consistently set the standard as far as how to be a pro. They have nailed that. And if they can continue to nail that part of it while at the same time fortify this roster for the next 3, 4 years, a lot of people down there remember, or maybe a lot of people don't. I remember what the glory years were like for Washington.
Yeah.
When Joe was there and they were at the height of their power. It's glorious, man. And they may be on to something again.
And it's funny that you say about meetings and not team meetings. Two of the guys who sit in the front, it's Jayden Daniels sitting next to Bobby Wagner. So I'm sure you're not surprised to hear
There
that.
you go.
And
Yeah, and see, what's funny, man, is like sometimes I don't know if it's like this now, but of course it's like this because human nature hasn't really changed that much. But sometimes, guys get concerned with being perceived in certain ways that really aren't productive. So put it this way. A lot of guys would be hesitant to want to sit up front on day one because they don't want to be perceived as the guy who's trying to kiss the ass of the coaches or curry favor. I don't want to look like I'm, Mr. Do-Right all the time. But like I remember like just a quick story. Like I remember in junior high and high school, like I was the guy who liked to sit in the front. I was the guy who liked to sit in the front of the bus because I just loved information. I loved for people, give me info, and I wanted to be right there. And the fact that this team had not only its first round pick sitting up front, but its grizzled Hall of Fame veteran, Mike linebacker, front facing guy, the guy who's at the command and control center, the green dot sitting up front. Everyone else is just going to be like, well, damn, we've got the young new guy doing it, who's the franchise, and we got the old Hall of Famer doing it. That just makes everyone else kind of like race to try and get right up behind them and follow their lead. That's what I'm talking about. Like that's what you're always after, man, when you're trying to build a roster. And they nailed it.
And you know how hard it is to get that alignment. So what often is the stumbling block that, and again, you're looking at this from outside here, but what can be the stumbling block and what do you look at like when you look at here, like, well, clearly they were, or is it communication? What is it that makes, because the Eagles do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, if you're going back to the hiring process and and you're looking at it from that vantage point in terms of what can be the stumbling block, it may be like maybe when you don't conduct your search organically and or have, and you don't remove biases, don't remove personal biases as far as like you went into it already with an idea of who you wanted and you kind of closed your mind off to other, other thoughts, other ideas, other possibilities. Obviously, Magic and Josh, they and whoever else was involved in that process, Bob Myers, whoever, helped Josh Harris with that whole process, obviously they coached them along very well to keep an open mind. And they have the requisite skill to really identify the kind of people who you think will help build that kind of alignment. And that's a skill in and of itself. Like hiring is a skill in and of itself, hiring the right people. It's not just, are those people the right ones who are going to like really foster alignment? Maybe it's you. Maybe it's your selection process that is the problem. Josh has had a history of being successful, right, at building organizations. It's not Magic Johnson has had a history of being a very successful businessman and a Hall of Fame basketball player. It's not Bob Myers has been pretty damn good at building successful organizations. It's not that hard to see why maybe they nailed this thing the way that they did. And so far, so good. So I think it's always about the people who are doing the selecting and their process, as well as then the people that they select remaining the person who they were during the ascent. Because what happens, right? Sometimes you get in those positions, and then all of a sudden you start losing track of what got you there in the first place. You start thinking, maybe it's about me. Maybe I'm the guy. Maybe I can just do it all myself. Or you just start getting all kinds of other things going on around you and people in your ear. And then you get distracted. And you lose your own sense of, hey man, what got me here is what I need to make sure I focus on. And obviously, so far, Adam's not. He hasn't let that happen, and
No,
that's. I mean, it sounds like we're sitting here just praising the hell out of this team, but they deserve they
they've
really
earned
do
it.
deserve it.
They've
They
earned it.
really do.
And I will
Yep.
say, you're absolutely right about keeping an open mind. And that's why, even during this process, you kind of say, like, everybody assumed Ben Johnson, but there were definitely people here who really liked Dan Quinn. But the
Yeah.
open mind was like they made, because I talked to them during this process, like they're trying not to, they don't want to fall in love with anybody until you
Yeah.
make that choice. So, but yeah,
No, I was just gonna say, like, and I don't mean like I know I haven't said a whole lot about Dan, but and that's not, that's not purposeful. Look, I'll say this: when the cool thing about doing broadcasting is you get to go into these production meetings and you can get out of them whatever you put into them.
right.
If you just want to like make that like a bullshit session and have it be something where you're just asking stupid questions and you're gonna get stupid answers and not learn anything. If you really put some thought into it and you really dig into like these guys and like their journey, you will learn a absolute ton.
Hmm.
Dan Quinn was one of those guys who was great to talk to because he was so open about
Yeah.
when he was in Dallas as a DC and the time that he had spent, out of football between Atlanta and Dallas about how he deconstructed himself and put himself back together and opened himself up to criticism from many different avenues because he said he needed to learn like what his blind spots were. He needed to learn what he didn't know about himself. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you could tell from talking to him, John, that when he got the next chance, that he was going to learn from the mistakes he made in Atlanta and he was going to be 10 times better than he was. You just knew it.
Right.
Then when you hear him talk now, while at the same time that he kind of made those improvements, he still hasn't lost who he is.
Right.
He's still going to turn his hat backwards. He's still going to look like an old defensive line coach, an old defensive coordinator, and he's going to be authentic to himself. And that's cool too. And to hear him talk about trust, I trust how much he trusts his rookie quarterback, how much he trusts Cliff Kingsbury, how Cliff Kingsbury himself has obviously gone through maybe some of the same processes as
Yep.
far as, hey, man, I kind of need to back away, decompress a little bit from all the stuff that I went through as far as being a head coach is concerned, focus on coordinating this offense, focus on, on Jayden Daniels. I, for one, me personally, I look at Cliff Kingsbury much differently now than I did when he was the head coach at Arizona. I think you're seeing very much so the best of who he is now,
Right.
as opposed to what he was there. And I wasn't a big fan when he was there, and I was wrong. And see that's the kind of thing where, like, as an evaluator, whatever it be, whether you're on TV in a front office, whether you're a professional journalist like yourself, like you always have to be taking in more and more data inputs to kind of like really round out what your thought process is on people. And I've done that with Cliff Kingsbury, and I'll say here right now to you, I had it wrong about him in Arizona. And what you see is the situation was much different for him there as it is for him now. And to hear him say, like, if I'm Josh Harris, I'll tell you what, I'm asking Cliff Kingsbury, what does it cost to keep you?
Right.
I'll pay whatever it costs. Because look, obviously that's one of the things as a defensive head coach, so to speak, when you have a offensive coordinator like him who was a former head coach who takes a guy like Jayden and just his career just takes off. There's gonna be people knocking down the door. If you're not at least talking to Cliff, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
But that's the number one fear I'm sure they have there. And if I'm Josh Harris, I'm going, hey, look, there's no salary cap on coaches. I'll pay this dude right up behind what Dan makes if I have to, because if they can keep that together, John, shit, yeah,
Agreed. Just a
yeah,
couple more minutes. Jayden
yeah,
Daniels. You
yeah,
obviously got to get it on him.
yeah,
First of all, what makes him for you? You played
yeah.
safety, you evaluated and all that. What are some of the little things that stand out, and where do you put him in the whole, I guess, the pantheon of quarterbacks right now?
Yeah, well, I'll start at the last thing that you just said. He's playing as well as any quarterback in the NFL, period. He doesn't have the resume of Patrick, of Josh, Lamar. Well, Lamar's not playing anymore, but he doesn't have that resume. He doesn't have the resume of Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford. There's nothing Jayden Daniels physically that he can't do that those guys do. He can do all those things that all those guys can do. And as a matter of fact, he may be able to do a lot of things better than what those guys do. He just doesn't have the resume yet. He just hasn't seen it as much as those guys have. So, you can put up any of his objective stats against anyone in the league, and you can make a case for him being MVP. As far as his value to that franchise, there's nobody whose value to their franchise is any higher than what his value is to Washington. You take him off Washington, they're not a playoff team. They're not. Just like if you take Patrick off Kansas City, I mean, Andy Reid told me this. They're dead in the water in many respects if he's not there because of what he's had to overcome this year. Same thing for Josh, same thing for Joe Burrow. So he's right in there with all those guys. And then you can argue it and you can, I'm not going to spend time debating that because whenever people get into debates like that,
Right.
like people get nasty and start saying like crazy ass stuff. And
Very.
the kid he's legit. They told me at LSU when I went down there for his pro day that his work ethic and his commitment to being great is unique. It's one of one type of stuff. It's exactly what you want. His mental horsepower, like he was born with it. He has the ability to retain, use in real time. He's very uh, he's very much so able to form relationships with his teammates, gain their trust. He wants to be one of the guys. He doesn't want to separate himself. He's a guy who's a uniter. He's not a divider. All of those things. I mean, really, there is no negative. You know what? I mean, last year during the draft process, what people when they were trying to try and draw a line between him and Caleb, what it always came down to was, well, Jayden's so skinny and he's so small, maybe he'd be one of those guys he's just not gonna last. He's gonna last just fine. You see how smart he plays.
Yeah.
He takes a few hits, but he doesn't take any more hits than anybody else.
Nope.
His arm, this is what made me really fall in love with him when I was down there at their pro day. You see how quick that release is?
Yep.
I mean, it's bink like that. It's like throwing a dart, or it's 3/4. It can be rolling right. It can be rolling left. And the deep ball accuracy, my God. I mean, the throw to Miami, in this past game against Detroit, where literally Miami had, the defender's arm draped over his eyes. There isn't a better throw in the NFL this year. There just isn't. Aaron Glenn blitzes him. I don't know how many times what the number was, but they never created not one single negative play on any 5-man plus pressure that they sent. Not one. That's insane for a guy to be able to handle that. They nailed the pick times 1,000. Like, he could not be more perfect of a prospect as far as his running ability, his passing ability, his resolve, his intelligence, type of teammate he is. You know what he's going to do off the field. He's going to take care of business. He's going to be one of those guys who I'm telling you, I think in the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to be talking about him the same way we talk about Patrick in terms of the influence Patrick had on Kansas City, which is we can't let that dude down.
Right.
And he's going to wind up getting one of those type of contracts where you're just going to go, what are those numbers again?
Yeah.
How good is that? Did anybody in Washington ever think, over the past 3-4 years, that would ever be a possibility?
Nope.
No,
not at all. And the funny thing is when he gets that contract, you know what you'll say? He earned it.
Hey, that's why I say all the time, tongue in cheek, but not really tongue in cheek. Like Kansas City. I mean, Lamar Hunt has, or rather, not Lamar Hunt. Yeah, they got Patrick at a discount. $500 million is a discount for them for what he brings to them in terms of his value to that franchise, not just on the field, but what he does and how he empowers everyone else and makes everyone else want to raise their level. Jayden's going to do the same thing. And I know this isn't a hot take. You know me. You and I have talked many times. When I believe something, I believe it right or wrong. And this guy, I believed in from day one. And it's just so damn cool to watch it unfold because he deserves it. He really does deserve it. That being Jayden Daniels, and really this organization, that fan base deserves it. I can only imagine what it's like going to work for you now. It's got to be pretty cool.
It's a lot of fun because, as I said before we started talking, it's mid-January, and all I've done this year, Louis, is talk about football. I love talking about football, and every week in the locker room, it's not about like, hey, do you think this guy's going to get fired, or like, why can't you guys do this? It's like, hey, what do you think about this matchup? What do you have to do to beat this matchup? I'm like, it's a dream. So
it's a dream. Good for you. I'm happy for you, man.
All right, man. Well, Louis, you're the best. I appreciate this. And thank you very
Yeah,
much
of
for taking some time out during a busy time. Appreciate it.
course. Thanks, John. All right.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Louis for joining me. And thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Saturday with my 5 things I think about the Commanders Eagles game on Sunday to decide who goes to the Super Bowl. Get used to that one, folks. Sounds kind of fun for you, doesn't it? Enjoy it. I'll talk to you next time.